It's been a bumpy road for the Keeta project, and so I think the next move might say it all because we've finally started to see it kind of start to mellow out a little bit. We've seen some momentum come back to the Keeta project, and even in a relatively difficult market, we have seen price do relatively okay, and I will say it was largely unaffected by this unbelievably massive liquidation event that we saw. It really didn't have much impact going on to it, which is, I think, pretty good. So we're going to have to see kind of what happens over the next little while, but I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing so far from the Keeta ecosystem, why I think the next move might say it all, and why I personally think that we may have actually seen a bottom here. Again, we don't know for sure. Nobody can tell the future, but I do think that there is something going on here that we should be taking a closer look at. So let's go on ahead. We'll dive right on in by focusing on the Keeta chart first, so I can show you in more detail kind of what exactly we're seeing here. Obviously, we've seen a really tough and punishing sell-off here. Actually, after hitting about a high of about $1.21, we've continued going all the way down until we actually hit a bottom of around 27 cents. We're currently sitting at about 45 cents. You can see we've climbed through a couple of different levels of resistance. Currently, we do seem to be sitting above this 43-cent level of support and holding it, at least for right now. Again, time will tell. But it does look like a little bit more momentum is coming to the Keeta project. You can see really pushing towards the top of the Bollinger Bands as well as the RSI here at this point. Now, as you know, when we see this, generally it means there might be a little bit of pullback or consolidation coming. We did see both, a little bit of a pullback and now coming into some consolidation. So we will have to see what happens over the next little while with the Keeta coin. But currently, it does look like we might see a little bit of some momentum coming back. So we'll have to check that out, of course. Time will tell. We'll see. I have not opened any positions into Keeta. Many of my trades have been limited to some of these larger crypto projects. You can see here I do have several different trades open. We have our Solana trade, which apparently just flipped negative, but we do have a decent bit of gains here on our AVAX short. That one's been running quite nicely. We also have our some Bitcoin trades open and our Ethereum trades. This was, for those of you who've not been watching the channel regularly, I was DCAing down as Bitcoin was dropping. And as you can see, we actually caught the bottom on some of these, or got pretty close to the bottom, and then we were starting to see these gains rise as Bitcoin starts to make that recovery. And so that was kind of the point here. And then of course we have some smaller or longs on both Solana and Ethereum that we should be seeing those hopefully do relatively well also. If you have any interest in trading, of course, you can check my links in the description below. As you can see, I do personally trade on Weex, though BTCC does have the best deposit bonus, at least going currently. If you are an ICP fan or an ICP holder, we do also have a limited time event that's only going for the next 2 weeks on BloFin. So if you are interested, feel free to check out BloFin, and we also have that link, but that is going to get you up to half a Bitcoin or some various different ICP rewards as well, which would be pretty cool if you are a holder there. Now, I want to go into some of the news here as we go into some of the things that might be driving Keeta Price on the rebound, but also some things that indicate why I think we may have seen a bottom, particularly down in this range. So let's dive right on in, and we will check the first one here, which is essentially coming from the whale pod. They're saying the maddest thing is that Keeta is still under 200 million in market cap right now. The highlighted downtrend is the main net sell-off, unwarranted but to be expected in crypto. Keeta looks headed back over $1 quickly. Now again, of course, we'll have to see. Nobody knows the future for sure, but as we did highlight in the chart, this main net sell-off was of course incredibly punishing, and it did of course cause a fair bit of heartache, particularly within the Keeta community. We can see here that the market cap, yes, still holding below that $200 million market cap range. I do think realistically that in order to see a sustained run like we saw potentially in this range, we will really need to see a sustained alt season, or not alt season, but just an environment that's more favorable to alts. If we go and we look at the market overview, you can see on the Bitcoin exchange liquidation map, it is looking like it is a little biased towards moving to the downside on the 1 day, and it's a little bit kind of split here on the 7 day. However, the thing that I am identifying is that we do have more liquidity in the short term to the upside, liquidating shorts almost $5 billion if we get to that 114,000 mark. So I do think that there is a possibility that maybe we see a short-term push up hit that, liquidate a lot of those, and then maybe we start to see that little bit of a climb back down, because I do think that we're not just going to teleport straight up back to previous all-time highs and things like that. I do think it'll be a little bit of a push-pull type of situation. In the short term, we can see that liquidations are stacking on the side of longs. It's just we might see a little bit more of a short-term move to the upside, hit the shorts, hit the shorts, liquidate the shorts, and then we come back and start to liquidate some longs as those continue to pile up. So that is something where I think we could see the bottom coming in, the bottom in, but maybe we're not going to see a super strong push for Keeta, because we need to see some of that more favorable type of altcoin events. If we do see Bitcoin continue to push, looking at the Keeta chart, we might be able to see us reclaim a couple more of these support levels here, or I guess at this point resistance levels here, as we start to climb back up, ideally kind of getting above the 56-cent range and getting into this kind of consolidationary zone we were sitting in for a while would be ideal. That is of course the best case scenario, but we will see. Now I have a couple updates here showing some of the why I think we might have hit a bottom here. Now let's go ahead and check out this tweet that I think is something that is indicative of kind of maybe hitting a low point from a community perspective, or a community kind of motivation, or things like that. I'm going to keep this person's identity hidden just because it is a little bit of a tough post. Of course, I do feel for the person. This is something that we of course do not want to be seeing in the crypto space, but unfortunately this is things that they do happen more often than not, which is really an unfortunate thing to see. But it does provide kind of a good lesson of maybe what not to do. You should never be investing more than you can afford to lose, as well as generally when we see this type of thing going on, and when people get too euphoric, that generally indicates a top. And then when those people who are euphoric that we're getting in get out due to despair and kind of a capitulation of sense, we start to see this type of thing, and that usually does indicate a bottom, right? So I'm not going to read the whole thing. Of course, basically the TLDR is, the person had brought in, or they'd bought in about $50,000. It's gone now to under $7,000, so almost a 90% drop, meaning that they probably had to be buying towards the very, very top of when Keeta was pumping, which is again, not something that we generally recommend. If we see something pump more than 2x within like a week or so, it's just an automatic no trade zone for me. That is something that it's a steadfast rule. It always comes down. And so that's something, it's an automatic no trade rule for me. You could see here, they were shilling it, raving it, going from 150 all the way down to 35 cents. And then they just couldn't do it once it hit 30. As you could see, this was we could see what happened to Keeta here. We were hitting prices up above $1, getting close to $2, $1.70, coming all the way down here to the 30-cent range, even getting down to like the 27-cent range. Now you can see, I do believe that they had mentioned that they had they'd sold out. They have 400 Keeta left from 37,000. Selling out very likely near the bottom, which is again generally not recommended, but I do understand if they had bills and things that they had to meet. But again, you cannot be investing things that you cannot afford to lose. That is just rule number one of investing. It's generally a bad idea, because when you are a forced seller, that is usually when you lose the most money. So as you can see here, really, really difficult situation, and I do feel for the person. But it's just like, this is the type of thing that generally indicates a bottom here, because we have this capitulation going on within the community. They think it's over. They think it's all gone. Everybody's selling out. And that's when usually we start to hit a bottom. Now, again, we could continue to go lower. We just never know for sure. But when we start to see those types of things and those types of emotions hitting the timeline, that's generally when I think it could be a time worth buying, because that is when everybody is the most fearful and everybody is the most scared of what is going on. So again, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. Of course, if you did, I'd love to hear it in the comment section below, and also like, subscribe, all that type of stuff. You know what to do. And then also, I'd love to hear any comment sections or any comments that you have regarding what you think of Keeta. Do you think that this is the bottom? Do you think it's up only from here? Do you think that a rough mainnet launch is really going to kill the project? Pro tip, if you have not been around for a while, there's been a bunch of successful cryptos that have had rough mainnet launches. So, I wouldn't say that's a death blow, but I'd love to hear your thoughts as well and just kind of what you think about the Keeta project as a whole. I still remain cautiously optimistic, but as I've mentioned, still kind of in a little bit of a no trade zone for Keeta, just to see what happens with the, with the tech and with some of the announcements and some of the fixes that we see made to the mainnet launch over the next little while. So anyway, feel free to let me know any comments, all those types of things, and drop those in the comment section. Really appreciate all of the support. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.